Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us for one of our HFA webinars. I'm Mark Schumacher, the CEO of HFA, and appreciate having you here. If you notice a little different backdrop, I'm on the road, actually coming to you from California this go around. So, you know, the webinars go on, doesn't matter where I am. But of course, I want to just remind you that you have a couple of ways to connect with us here. One, on the right side of your screen, you're going to see a little chat box. If you have any questions you'd like to have us address, please put in the chat. We'll do our best to get to those questions before we end our webinar today. And second of all of our webinars are on demand. myhfa.org/webinar. You can find every one that we've done. It's an amazing library of incredible information that's going to help your business. And that's what this is all about, is supporting our HFA members. And so today, the subject is reaching your audience with the right digital content. And we've done quite a bit talking about digital, but today we're going to specifically, and I'm going to do my best to keep us on track. We're going to be talking about digital content, because this is really what everything sort of rotates around, is really, really good content. We've got a great panel as always. Let me introduce them. Marissa Peacock is joining us. She is co-founder and chief strategist for the Strategic Peacock. She has a ton of background in online content, which is why she's here. So Marissa, we're glad you're joining us. Jason Pires is joining us. He's a creative and brand director for Furniture Branding. That's a multifaceted marketing agency that also does a ton on the digital side. And you might recognize our third guest, Justin Bowen, is joining us again from the Great American Home Store. They're based out of Memphis, Tennessee. He is their e-com manager, and he was so good last time. By popular demand, we dragged him back in just to be on another way. No, we appreciate it. Three of you, thank you so much for joining us here. I appreciate that very much. There are so many ways that we can kind of slice and dice this, and so I'm going to try to kind of walk us through all of this. But I thought I would start with this, because it's a question that we hear coming up all the time. And Marissa, we'll start with you. Okay. How important, we'll talk about the types of messaging and things coming up in a few minutes. How important though is consistency? Because there's a great deal of concern among the people watching this and others about mixing up the content, the message, if you will, and talking about consistency. How important is consistency? Because it's a question everybody's asking.
Consistency is important on two fronts. So social media is sort of my expertise and my background, and consistency on social media is paramount to the algorithms, right? So the algorithms really sort of respond to the consistency. The organic algorithms will feature your content more prominently in other people's feeds the more consistently you post, right? So if you take a break every 2 weeks or every month, you're kind of starting over from scratch every time you sort of, get back on. So consistency of posting, and it doesn't have to be like multiple times a day or even, several times. I mean, it can be one or twice a week, but as long as you're just consistent in that posting, the algorithm will respond to that. So that's one piece where consistency is helpful. In consistency of messaging, consistency is in the colors that you use, the words that you use, the logos that you use, and just how you refer to your products, your services, your audience, how you speak, that tone of voice, because all of that is necessary to convince your user that you are the same person that they are seeing, regardless of it's social media, in an online environment, in print, on the billboard. That consistency really reinforces your authenticity. And so they learn to trust that message because it is consistent from touch point to touch point.
So Jason, before we really talk specifically about some aspects of types of content and different aspects of that, this is really kind of an important place to start, because what you create, I guess, from what I'm hearing Marissa say, what you create is definitely something that you need to carry through consistently, or it's just going to be a mishmash. Is that correct? Give me some idea.
It is correct. I mean, our agency background has that foundation in branding, and of course we layer on the digital marketing on top of it. So we're always looking at things from that brand perspective. And, to what Marissa was saying, consistency in image, tone, and voice, there are these various touch points, technically speaking, colors and so on, but there's that essence that has to come through across the various touch points. We are sentient beings at the end of the day, and we end up feeling these things at a deeper level, even though we might not be conscious of it. So having the right tone and voice and having it defined and consistent across the board is extremely crucial because it develops a sense of, you know, for the customer, like, well, I know this brand, I know this company, and a familiarity. Yeah, exactly. So it works at a much deeper level when it is consistent and well executed and cohesive.
So Justin, what does that look like at the Great American Home Store?
Yeah, so consistency for us is speaking to company values and the things that we stand for as a brand and as an organization. And for us, you know, that's going to, of course, differ than what it might be for somebody else. But things that are important to us are community, integrity, and being transparent and offering people a great value every day. And that kind of messaging has to keep, you know, bubbling up. You know, it's not necessarily the focus of every single piece and every single post, but overall, that's what we want to bring out. You know, through, again, what they mentioned with how we present the product, with how we message the posts or whatever the content is, and then also how we brand everything.
You know, the apologies for a little bit of background noise there. The mailman just came back. The dogs are going crazy. You know, that goes. No, but this is really a great start for this because, and Marissa, I'm going to pick up on this because I don't want to leave this just yet. Because what I love about this is that when we talk about digital content, everybody wants, you know, sort of the just add water, instant, you know, success, right? But what I'm hearing the three of you say in different ways, but in the same is that if you don't have your vision for what you are about, I mean, Justin, you just said it, you know, what you stand for, what you're about. If you don't have that figured out first, then it's just going to be a lot of words and stuff thrown at people, right? I mean, that's that authenticity. Marissa, talk a little bit more about that, because I think this is where, you know, we need to tell people to start, not to put all these other pieces together. And, oh, by the way, how does this fit in with your company values, et cetera?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I love infrastructure and I love a process and a workflow. And so digital content really flourishes when you have an infrastructure to support it. And that means having a way forward, you know, a clear path as to why you are even creating this content in the first place and why it is being published, where it's being published. A lot of companies sort of struggle with this because they don't really understand what they're trying to get out of these different touch points in these different channels. They just think like, oh, I have to be on Facebook because everyone's on Facebook, and they don't really understand, well, is this a lead generation? Is this brand awareness?
Yeah.
Is this, you know, just, you know, fun, you know, behind the scenes type of content? So really understanding why your content is there is important. So that's the who you are, what are you doing? And then being able to keep that up in a structured environment just makes it so that you're not driving yourself crazy, right? And so if you're having to come up with a new idea for your content every time you want to publish it, that's exhausting. And so really having sort of a nice blueprint that says, hey, you know what, this eventually we want to get to sell our product, but before we can, you know, get people interested, we have to introduce ourselves to them. So there's a little bit of brand awareness and education that needs to go into that. And so if you can incorporate that into your calendar, eventually you'll get to the point where it's selling itself because you've really invested in building that message into, you know, that content awareness, that content workflow.
And Jason, I guess from a branding standpoint, the reason that I kind of wanted to step on this whole thing first is because if you're not careful, I would imagine that in your hunt for the right kind of digital content that you could inadvertently really dilute your brand or confuse people.
Yes,
Questions for me, right? I don't know if you said Marissa.
Yes, please.
All right. Jason? Yeah, okay. Yes. All right. Yeah, sorry. It sounded similar. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's also very easy to get into, although it's important to know what's going on, what are the hot topics, what is everybody discussing right now, what are the things that you can kind of find a way to connect to be able to, you know, channel your message in a sense. At the same time, you know, you don't want to dilute it. I mean, I think ultimately, you know, I like to say brand is as brand does, you know, so, you know, if you are doing something, portraying yourself a certain way, or if it, you know, comes across as possibly chaotic, you know, it just ultimately leaves, you know, the customer with that feeling. So going back to, what was mentioned earlier about, values. I think values and understanding the pillars of your brand are really fundamental, because that's the core, and it kind of ultimately underlies or can seed the content, that you're going to be creating, whether it's for social media. I mean, and there's other channels like email, or, even content that lives on site as well.
So let me ask you this then, as we kind of move our way through this. So Justin, with all of that as our premise here, at least where we started, since we're trying to really give some great details about the right kind of digital content for you all at the Great American Home Store, what's resonating right now from that digital content standpoint? What are the things that you're finding are really the success points for you right now?
There's a few main things that we do with digital content, and the main one is probably product content. And I know a lot of people will have other people do their product content, or they just don't even touch it. I would highly advise against that. I mean, I know that in some cases it's not practical, it's not feasible, but for your most important products, I really think you should have your own product content strategy. We have, goodness, 5 or 6 people that, kind of 4 that work on it every day, and then a couple people that do work on it occasionally. But we all, in a sense, kind of work on product content. And when I say product content, what does that mean? Photography, image, for image editing, videos. We create our own videos, and then we also do like copy and dimensions, and we'll literally go measure it ourselves in the store and put our hands on it and feel it and pull the cushions out, because a lot of the times the manufacturer doesn't tell you those things. There's a lot that you can't see, and you want your customer to be able to just look at it on the website and get those details that many times they only get if they go in store. So that's one thing. Another thing would be like our blog content, which we use for kind of bringing in like the either post-purchase remarketing, or also kind of like while they're in the consideration phase, like, steps about what would make a great living room arrangement, or if you have a challenging living room, how do you lay that out? Things like that. So we'll use that content as well to help kind of augment that buying process. And then, of course, also our social media content, which we personally are very heavy on Facebook. That's not to say that, you need to go fire up a Facebook account or intensify your Facebook. I'm very much a believer in everybody's audience and business is different, and what works best for us may not work best for you. But that's where we found success. And so we've dialed that up, and we're doing a whole lot more with that. We're posting, mini posts every week, and that's where we're finding the bulk of our engagement. That turns into customer conversations, and then you have to have somebody knowledgeable there that can answer those, field those comments and questions and messages and things that generates. So I think that's another thing, is don't just create content and put it out in the air. Like, have a follow-up strategy. If you're doing articles, include it in your email marketing, include it in your on-site recommendations. If you have, you can either hard place those and say like, okay, put a sofa article on a sofa page, or if you have the more sophisticated one, if you have like an AI or an algorithm-based content recommendation system, you can put that in place, and that'll kind of make a lot of those on-the-fly decisions for you for each customer. But those are the main areas that we produce content in.
And this is now the true reason why you see that we brought Justin back, because they have a very sophisticated program there. There's just no doubt about it. I mean, I love the detail you talked about. Very much a 360 approach to looking at this, not just from one angle. Marissa, I want to ask a couple of things here. I also kind of a word I wrote down here, and I'm taking a ton of notes as usual, is a lot of that it's purposeful, but it also sounded organic. And what I mean by that is that so much of it is theirs. How do you feel about that, that they make sure that they're the ones creating their own product content? Not everybody can do that, but what are your thoughts about that first and foremost?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the great essential control. I mean, so earned media, awesome. We love earned media, but if we're going to create our own content, we want to make sure it has what we want in it. And that we are using the words that people are using to describe us or looking for us, right? We don't want there to be any sort of misalignment. And I love what Justin is doing, because when people are buying furniture, no matter if it's an end table, a lamp, or a couch, they're investing a lot of time and energy into figuring out which one is the right one for them. So any degree of content that you can provide for them, whether it's a 360 view of it or being able to see it, VR, technology to see it in their room, or just simply just saying, hey, here are some ways you can put this in your living space. It's a huge opportunity for the company, because they get to demonstrate that we just don't make couches, we understand our couches, and we are, we treat every couch like it's, our own, and we know it inside and out. That's a company I want to buy from, because they're anticipating my needs as a customer, and they've really sort of understood what my customer journey is. So the more content that you can provide on your own, one just gives you so much you can demonstrate to the customer, but then it gives you so many great data points, right? You can see what they're actually looking at before they make a purchase, and then you can be, refining it and evolving it as those needs change. A more educated buyer is someone who's going to buy more from you because they know what they want, versus someone who doesn't really know and is not getting anything back from that company.
Jason, let me ask you a question related to this. I don't want to get off product content just at this moment. I want to ask a bit more about this. So one of the things that Marissa said and that Justin talked about here, so is there honestly a difference, do you feel, between using what I would call provided or more like stock footage versus the type of stuff Justin's talking about, which may be a question of seeing that sofa in their store or in a different kind of a context? Is that, it's a nuance, but is that a difference maker, do you believe?
Oh, I definitely believe it's a difference maker, excuse me. I think what it comes down to, especially for a retailer that's servicing a local market or a regional market, I think what it does is it helps differentiate, right? So, what it does is it says, it removes this kind of corporate feel, or like I'm basically like every other company that you see. I mean, there's a lot of competition out there. There are a lot of websites that, you can upload ready-made catalogs, and people are exposed to this quite a bit in their kind of journey. And I think what that does is it kind of breaks that down. It creates, more personality for the company. Yeah, it creates content, and it further informs, the customer along the way. But I think what it also does is it removes this kind of transactional relationship that you have with a customer, right? I mean, I know it's important. At the end of the day, that's what we want. We want them to buy, but we don't want the entire journey for that customer to be just purely transactional. I went on, I saw the basic specs, they carry it, maybe I'll call in and I'll negotiate, whatever it is. If you've invested in that relationship with a retailer and vice versa, there's a greater chance that you're going to, be able to do business with them.
I think that's a kind of an amazing early takeaway here, because you would think a little bit of that be plug and play, but I like the fact that you said it just makes it feel less transactional and more. And that's when I kind of get into that organic thing. It felt more real. Justin, you said something else that I thought was really a great early takeaway in this webinar as well, is that you don't approach any of this digital content without a follow-up strategy. Will you talk a little bit more about that? Because that just says to me that you're already thinking 3 steps past where you've started.
Yeah, follow-up is extremely important. I mean, we know from analyzing our customer cohorts that there's 3 main buckets that they fall into, and about 50% of those they buy 1 time, and then another 30% buy 2 times, and then another 20% buy 3 or more times. And that 20% is a major part of our customer, or is actually part of our revenue base. So if you don't get that 1-time person, I mean, great, you sell them 1 time, but you're missing out probably on the majority of your revenue if you only focus on that 1-time sale. It's getting them to 2 and getting them to 3 where you really start maximizing the benefit that your marketing is doing for you, because for every customer you're acquiring, you're paying a cost, right? To get them to buy on your website, to walk through your door, to sign at the cash register, those all have costs associated to them. If that is you're going from, let's say you have a $2,000 lifetime value, if you can make that 3, 4, 5, you're maximizing that advertising, most people I think know that it's a whole lot cheaper to get a return customer than like back and spend money than to get a new customer. I think, in the past, I think that number's been like it's 7 times cheaper. So yeah, follow up is super important. So follow up means for me, if you're doing, let's take social media. So I think one of the things with social media is, people just kind of like put content out there. And I think it was Jason, somebody mentioned earlier, or it might have been Marissa, that it was talking to cold audiences, what I call a cold audience, which is somebody who doesn't know you. You have to introduce yourself. Okay, introduce yourself. Well, what do you do from then, right? Like you have to have some idea of where that relationship is going. And I love what Jason was talking about with relationship. I think that's the difference maker, is building that relationship. So for social media, and not just social media, you apply this to other digital advertising, but I think social is an easy place. You can, instead of just like, okay, let me talk to a cold audience and then drop them, and we got this many clicks, we got this much engagement, great, let's do another one. Like, okay, let's take that cold audience and then the people that engaged with that ad or that post, put them in another audience of these were the engagers from the cold audience. Now let's move them down to the next stage. Okay, so we introduced ourselves. What are we going to do next? Are we going to tell them about product? Or are we going to tell them about some of our services, some of the things that differentiate us, give them some product to look at? You kind of have to decide what works for your strategy at that point. But, you should at first communicate your brand values, and what makes you stand out, and then kind of show, all right, well, this is how we do this. Maybe, the first stage is the why buy from us. The second stage is how we live up to the values that we have, and why that translates into how we can help you achieve what you're looking to do. And then the last stage is, of course, conversion. And so you take the people who engage with the second one, move them down to the third, and then that is your conversion audience. And those are the people that you try to close the sale with. And then you should, after that, you're not done. You still have the re-engagement for the people who bought, and you want to keep them coming back, right? Because you don't want them to just be a one-time buyer. You want them to be a 3+ time buyer. So that's where some of that digital content, like the blog articles, the product, complementary products, so product recommendations, reach out to them. Hey, have you thought about this to complement your room that you just purchased? That's kind of what I'm talking about with follow-up, and you can apply that to any channel.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. I'm watching Jason and Marissa just nodding all the way through here, just like going, holy smokes, because you're not just, you take the now what out of it, right? You put out some digital content and you get results. You're like, okay, now what do we do? You already have not one, not two, but I think I counted 4 pathways that can go on. Marissa, I want Jason, you to talk about it as well. There's some reaction to that, because this really talks about a plan to have in place, not just to throw things against the wall.
Oh, totally. I love having a plan. Everything's easier when you know what comes next, or at least where there are different variations that you can apply things to. And again, I mean, this isn't our persona webinar, but this is where your audience analysis comes in. This is how knowing, are they buying for is this their first apartment that they're buying for, or is this their beach house, right? That plays into the type of content that you're going to present them with. Or are you going to be marketing this for price and affordability and convenience, or is this going to be luxury? Again, those are content decisions that really depend on who you're selling to. And if that content is misaligned, someone's going to mistake something as, oh, this isn't for me. This is not going to match where I am in my customer life cycle right now. And then even going with Justin, the follow-up after conversion, not just that re-engagement, but presenting content that reaffirms that they've made the right decision. Hey, we're living up to these companies' values. We're working in our community. Hey, here's this great partnership that we're doing. Here's some money that we've donated to charity. Again, this reaffirms that, okay, I purchased from this company because I liked the item and I liked the company, and now they're demonstrating that continually afterwards, which is going to then, when I need something else, they're going to be top of mind because they continually to demonstrate that through their content.
I mean, he said it. He said it. You know, we know that acquisition is a lot more expensive than retention is. Let's just face it. And so this is really part of having that strategy. Jason, I noticed you were also nodding like crazy. It sounds like this is really a good mindset to have going into it, is really understanding not just what that digital content is, the right content right now, but where's that leading us? Where are we going to take that person on that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot to be said about developing a solid strategy and knowing how to use the systems. It sounds to me like, you know, Justin's company is sophisticated and well organized in this matter, that, you know, they know to a finite level their audiences, the behavior, where they're going next, and they've been able to segment it. So there's a degree of complexity built into that. So, you know, kudos to them for success in getting that done. For smaller companies, it's sometimes a little bit more organic, or it's a little bit harder to do because you have, you know, different people wearing different hats, and how do you kind of organize that? Thankfully, technology does, you know, it makes a gigantic difference, but it all at the end of the day comes down to, you know, what strategy do you have in place? How well do you know your customer's journey to purchase? You know, what kind of funnels have you set up, you know, in your marketing to be able to kind of, you know, take them down that particular path? And, you know, it takes a lot of really understanding your customers. So I like to think about it for clients, you know, right when we're starting out, let's say if it was a clean slate, right? You have to look at your website, what's worked, your results, your social media, whatever you have there, your customer database, and start working from there outwards, in a sense, to fully understand your customer, build those personas like Marissa was talking about, understanding, you know, their behavior, what their likes are, and, you know, what their interests are, and so on. And then you also have to be, you know, when you are running advertising, especially digital advertising, taking the cues from what you're seeing on the conversions coming in from that, and you're kind of building to some extent a bridge, you know, or you're kind of like piecing this together. You know, it's not always a clear thing that you can just kind of sit and look at, and there's a map already there for you. You know, you're mapping that. So yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, to get to that point where you have something very structured, even if it starts simple and you layer and you build onto it, I think it's crucial for success. The thing is to start and kind of build those layers, so it doesn't become, you know, with a bigger organization, it's easier to do because you have more people in that process. With smaller organizations, is making sure that you don't overwhelm the process in the beginning and not do what needs to be done.
But yet I'm hearing you all say, though, you definitely want to have a plan so that the work you're putting in to have that positive content that you're able to take at different places. Let me do this. I'm going to see how this works with this group. I like to occasionally throw toss-ups out there. So I'll let whoever wants to jump in first. So we've got a lot of questions that have come in from people that are joining us today. So how do you get people to respond? I know these sound kind of broad, but let's talk about this. Again, we're talking about the right kind of digital content. So how do you get people to respond? I'll throw that one out there to the group.
Ask questions, you know, questions that aren't, you know, too specific about, say, if it's a project that they're working on, but maybe something a little bit more in depth about, you know, what they might be looking for in a remodel, in a sense, or it might be something like, you know, if it's a mattress company, you know, what are some of the challenges that you have, you know, with regards to sleeping cool, you know, and it's like various topics that you have there. But I think ask questions and you'd be surprised, especially like on social media, you post like surveys or whatever, you know, people do answer. They want to engage, you know, at the end of the day, people want to socialize. It's not like they don't. And it doesn't have to be this like, okay, I'm Stonewall. If you can't talk to me, in a sense, we want to open it up, in a sense. It's got to be also fun and
Jason,
engaging.
it is called social media, right? I mean, I mean, hello, Marissa, you were nodding there too. Some thoughts about.
So I work a lot with smaller businesses, and the great thing about smaller businesses is that they can be really agile in how they deliver a call to action or get users to engage. I mean, so again, if you have, you know, a local following, you can put something on social as a test to see if people respond to it. And if they respond to it, great, you know it works. And if it gets ignored, you know that maybe that's not the right channel. So you can have fun and kind of make it an experiment. You know, I think calls to action, I think we sometimes take that for granted. people, as Jason was saying, people want to contribute, people want to engage, but they don't want to be the first ones to do it, or they don't want to have to figure it out for themselves. Don't make them work harder than they have to. So I think people sometimes are saying like, well, how can I help this local business? Or what can I do? You know, or how can I learn more? And so pointing them in that direction, even if it seems really obvious, do it anyway. Say, you know, hey, share this post with your friends, or tag 5 people, you know, in this post, or, you know, retweet this to, you know, get whatever promo code or something, whatever that thing is that you're going to try and do engagement, ask explicitly and they will do it, or they won't. And that's still really good intelligence.
I mean, I've always told people that I've read so much about this, that everybody has an inherent desire to help.
Yeah.
And they just have to be asked, and that help can be in any number of different ways. Justin, before we move off of this, since you guys put so much into action, how do you also respond to that? You know, getting people to respond, to be interactive. How would you answer that?
Yeah, I've got a few thoughts on this. I love what has been said already, and I wouldn't take anything away from that. Just add to it. Asking questions, yeah, absolutely, that's really key. What I think the big difference between an ad that just falls flat a lot of times and one that does generate more activity is starting with the need of the customer rather than the need of the business. And I'll give you an example. I saw one today. Actually, it's great. I took a screenshot of it, but I was on Reddit and I saw a post from a publisher, and it said, "We want Redditors to read the name of the journal," and they were offering a deal. But that was the lead line, and they were leading with what they wanted me to do. Well, then I won't go into detail about it, but they proceeded to use kind of almost condescending wording. I was like, if you're really trying to get a customer to convert, you don't want to like insult them. So
Right.
I thought that was pretty interesting. But instead, if you start with get the edge in your visual conversations or your threads on Reddit when you subscribe to blank, that to me grabs my attention because it's oriented around something I want to do. It's an action verb and something that I might need. If I have that need, it's going to resonate with me, and I'm probably more likely to take action on that than what somebody is wanting me to do just because they want my money, right? So that in the furniture world, I think that translates into, let's start with, you know, what is the need of the customer? Why would they even buy this product, right? Not just, hey, we need to clear our inventory, buy this product now, we have it, it's at a great price, right? So I think let's start with the right lead in to the messaging, and then again, follow up. So how do you continue that? I think you have to ask the questions, but then also you have to not provide all the answers. Sometimes we want to throw out everything and say, this is the full deal, this is the full offer, and get it now, right? I've found that tends to just kind of, once people have all the information, they quit engaging with you. And that's in marketing. That's also in your interactions with the customer online. I've heard so many people complain about, well, I messaged this customer and then they just ghosted me. Well, and then I look at what they sent them and I'm like, well, did you ask them a follow-up question? Did you provide them all the answers? And usually if they didn't ask a question and they gave them all the answers, that customer is gone, because why do they need you? So I think in both your marketing and then also in your customer interaction, you should always be conveying, if you continue to engage with me, if you take the next step, this is how I'm going to serve you and the tangible benefit you'll get from interacting with me. But also too, make it easy for them to continue to engage, but don't just throw everything at them, because once they've got it, they're going to go and they'll take it, they'll go shop somebody else, and your relationship is done.
Jason, I saw you kind of raised your hand there for a sec. You had a follow-up to that or add on to?
Yeah, kind of an add-on to, not specifically to the last part about, the interaction. I think that if you want your customer to respond to something that we lean towards, especially at the top of the funnel, is creativity. At the end of the day, it's important to be creative, to do things that are, especially for social media, like advertising. It's, instead of just running, okay, we have the TV spot, let's just kind of put it on there, reformat it or whatever. It's about how can you create, translate that message or what you're trying to achieve in a creative way, a way that's going to stop them. Like, imagine you're scrolling through a feed, right? And you're seeing just so many things, dogs, food, somebody bought a house, all this. What's going to make you really, stop at, at least at that awareness level to like pay attention? And I think, once you've laid the strategy and you know how you're going to build the fund, like you've got this framework, the bones are there in a sense. We have to think about architecture, which is, or like, the interior design, let's say, right, to use that analogy, and how is that message going to come across? Is it fun? Is it engaging? Is it eye-catching? Within, of course, the foundation of your values. You don't want to just do something random just because you want to draw attention. So
no, I think we've again, another great number of takeaways here as far as we're looking for that really great content. Is I love that asking questions. I love the don't give them everything. It's a little bit of that. This is an analogy I've used a lot with a lot of promotional aspect of the world that I've been in, and that has been, I look at content and say, when you come home from work and you've had something really interesting that day, what happened? You see somebody, you're like, oh, God, I got to tell you what happened, and you want to tell that story, right? And you've got that excitement, right? I want to tell this. That's kind of the approach that I've always seen on the kind of content that just grabs me, is that thing where, man, I want to hear it. And then to Justin's point, now I want to know more. So, we've had questions here also about creating excitement. And Marissa, is that fair or is that word overused? I know you said fun, but is that also part of this, is that you want to create a little bit of mystery? You want to, you don't want to give everything away. I mean, how important are those nuances?
I think you need to provide a return on engagement. And that has to be, asking questions is great, but what are you doing with that information? And so if you're asking, and it can be something as simple as, hey, what color should we incorporate into this pillow, right? And if people are giving you suggestions, when you make that decision, you need to then follow up with them and say, hey, you spoke up and we listened, and now the color of this pillow, the new color we've added is this. Yep. And so what that does to the customer is says, hey, when they ask questions, they're really listening and they're doing something with that information, and now I get to be a part of that.
So let me pause with you for a second. So let's just kind of riff with this, because then I hear, and that is we're just using that as an example. So if somebody said blue, like I'm wearing blue right now, maybe even if you don't turn that pillow blue, the point of the matter, and Justin, you can jump in on this, would be to say, it's interesting you talk about blue because we've gotten these new products that are, is that kind of it? Do you just sort of continue that and kind of follow them? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, sorry, Justin, you can speak more to that.
No, you can go ahead.
No, I think that's exactly right. I think even if you say, hey, you know what, we got a lot of great suggestions and this is the color we went for, but here's this whole other product line of color, that come in this color, and you might want to check it out. So it's always sort of redirecting. Or just kind of letting them know where the path can take them. Okay, so maybe you've reached a dead end over here, but here's this other pathway that you can go down. Or letting them know that this is something you're going to do every year, or what do they get? Not only we chose the color that you suggested, but we're going to give you a promotional discount for just suggesting something.
So, I mean, we could go on forever on this, because you're just saying you open the door and then find pathways to take them down. I love this, because that, I think when we're talking about really key takeaways for anybody in this call, it doesn't matter the size of your business, really is providing, a return on that engagement, making sure that if you're going to start this conversation, that you're ready to take it somewhere else. To Justin's point, make sure you've got that follow-up strategy. No, I think that's a really, really key point for people to understand. And we talk about that, creating excitement, all these keywords. I'm looking at some of these other questions here, and increasing engagement. You answer all of that with this kind of an approach, don't you? And Justin, why don't you take that? I mean, if we're talking about getting people to respond, being exciting, being fun, engaging, there's none of that doesn't fit with exactly what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, I think over the last several years, we've kind of moved towards the direction that we've been wanting to go has been more I call like conversational marketing. And that is where, you know, your social media, if you're doing SMS, if you're doing email, those are opportunities, or even on your website, everything is an opportunity wherever you're marketing to then start a conversation with someone. So I think most people don't expect that. I mean, one of the things that we do with our SMS now that we didn't even do this last fall, and it's been tremendous, is making it so that if somebody texts us back to a bulk message,
Mhm.
we have someone who knows what they're talking about that can respond to them right then.
Yeah.
I don't know that even a lot of people are aware that, like, if I send a text back to this is just a bulk mail, that am I even going to get a response? So it's kind of unexpected. Same thing with email.
Mhm.
You know, getting it to where they can respond to an email, or they can respond to a Facebook ad, or let's say you're doing Instagram, or, you know, whatever you're doing, make it so that if somebody's interested, give them an easy way to then talk with someone who can give them an answer. And then that's where you start that relationship. I think relationship, we've all kind of been hitting on it. Relationship is so key now, because the relationship so many times is what, you know, if you want that referral and you want that retention, that's what keeps people. Well, I've been working with Sue over there at, you know, Great American or whatever store. And, you know, and we see it in our reviews every time. They always mention it's the person they worked with that
That's
brought them
key.
back. It wasn't that they had a great sale, or that, you know, you had just the right product. I mean, that's of course really important and one of the main things that's going to make them come there. But, you know, again, they're going to get those products, but it's the relationship that keeps them coming back. So, you know, yes, we do that in our stores. We got to start doing that in the front, you know, in the front
Right.
end as well, in the marketing. That's where it all starts.
Right.
Yeah, that's a tremendous sort of a filter to, you know, as everybody's thinking about content, is what does that journey look like in that relationship building? And once again, making sure that you've got pathways, or that you have sort of the ability to take people through the process. Let me get to a couple of other questions here about that are surrounding differentiation, and we'll try toss up again. I like these most. I know that, just feel free to jump in. So there was two questions right in a row here that was talking about how do we rise above the clutter, and someone else referred to it as cutting through the sea of sameness. So those are two things. There's a lot out there. So let me throw that out. Who wants to approach that about how to go ahead, Jason?
Yeah, I think I'll say something to that. So I think one of the advantages that, you know, a retailer that is, you know, competing, say, against a much larger company, say like a Wayfair, competing with somebody online. I think one of the advantages, going back to what Justin was talking about, is the ability to have this more dynamic relationship, right? It's like you're able to respond, you're able to give it a personal touch when you're actually communicating. And I think that, you know, that because, you know, you have limitations as to how much time and attention you can put in any particular area. So that's the built-in challenge. At the same time, the advantage that it gives you is when you do, and I want to speak to discipline and consistency afterwards as well on this subject, but I think it allows you to do things that are, again, more personal, that feel very real and authentic. So for example, you know, how can you cut through the clutter? Like if you have a particular process, you know, that's, you know, in your, you know, for your company, how you service or product development or whatever it might be, you know, I think one of the ways that we're seeing a lot of success with retailers and brands is through like reels on Instagram, as just one example. Like video content is crucial. Whether it's interesting. We had a video for a mattress retailer. Is it okay to kind of give it a specific example in
Oh,
this
sure.
case?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we like case studies. Absolutely.
So we, you know, spent time in one instance creating a reel that was more elaborate, and, you know, having, you know, this whole, like, it was visually very well put together, very professional and so on. And then we had an idea, you know, with one of the owners, like, say, you know what, it's you know, it's a celebration of a particular, you know, day, and, you know, honoring, you know, police. I forgot exactly what it was. So we just said, why don't you speak to the camera, go there and say how you really feel. And if you have, if you've contributed to this particular cause, whatever it is, just talk about it from the heart, just be sincere and so on. And that particular piece of content, even it was like not professionally produced, I had to shoot it a couple times, the angle was weird, and it's like, I just shoot it again, was extremely successful. I mean, it was, compared especially to the one that was much more professionally put together. So there's something to be said about having those opportunities to create a piece of content that's kind of more real and organic. And I see videos, people talking to the camera, especially, to be very successful. It could be, okay, well, we just got this on the floor. It looks absolutely amazing. Come in and check it out, say something funny or whatever that might be. That's just one example, of course. But, those instances or process videos are extremely successful as well. Like, people just love to watch process. It can be cooking, it can be making a mattress, it can be whatever it is.
But you said something really interesting, because that successful post had nothing to do with a specific product sale. That was all about, that's all about raising the brand. Marissa, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I love process videos just as a consumer, but also from the marketing standpoint. You're showing, you're gonna, a couch is a couch is a couch, okay, at the end of the day. But it's the people who are, so we were talking about relationships. One of my favorite type of content to create for companies is that behind the scenes, or doing staff member introductions. Tell me, what your favorite hobby is, how long you've been working there, what do you love working about? That creates a rapport. Now I'm not just buying a couch, I'm contributing to a local company, and I am investing in an organization that, shares my values, or, or whatever that thing is. And that is something that you can't do at the higher level. So I feel like if you're a smaller, medium-sized business, I feel like that's where your edge is to, and again, what I tell my clients is that, yes, this is what you do for a living. You know it inside and out. And there are probably elements of it that you don't find exciting. But for people who don't do what you do, it's exciting. We don't get to see a showroom being unloaded or redesigned. We don't get to see new product coming in and being unpacked. That's kind of cool to see. We don't get to see that every day.
It's the people behind the curtain, right? I mean, exactly. it's that providing that kind of, no, I think that's awesome.
It's disruptive at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, and remember, the premise of this part of this discussion was, how do you cut through the clutter? How do you get out of the sameness? That's, you've just given us some great examples. And I love, Jason, I love what you said about that, that just something that was all about the social responsibility of the ownership of the store.
Yeah, exactly.
Not what they carry. And I mean, there's some powerful stuff in there. There's a question that was asked, and I don't know who asked it, so I don't want to embarrass anybody, but I just there's a part of this, as I read it, I thought there may be an inherent problem in the premise. It said, talking about specific, campaigns, things like this, it said, how do we get our top 3 messages across? And maybe you see where I'm going with the questioning the premise. Is that just not an approach that you would suggest out of the gates, because there's already this predetermined, we've got to get 3 whatever messages across, that there's that part of it? Justin, I saw you kind of nodding. What are your thoughts about that? Or is the host completely wrong, and is that a great question, and I'm just not the expert, and I'm making comments?
I think so many times you have to take things in context. I'd kind of want to hear a little bit more about that, but I think it depends. It depends on who you're talking to. What are you trying to get them to do? And you don't necessarily have to throw all those things at once. If you go back to what we were talking about earlier with the stages, you have to talk to customers in stages, because they're not just going to fall over and be like, oh, this amazing ad, I'm going to buy it now. You have to slowly warm them up. It's getting to know them, getting to know you. They have to learn who you are. What do you stand for? What kind of products you carry? And that's a process, especially with furniture, which is more considered. You've got to build that up. So I don't necessarily totally disagree with the question. I just think it's a matter of maybe timing, who you're talking to. Do you want to communicate all 3 of those at once? Is that going to overwhelm them? Maybe
that's kind of where I'm
just
going.
One of those messages at a time.
Right.
If they like that, they keep talking to you, they keep engaging.
Right.
Maybe bring the next message. That's kind of more how I would take that.
And I
Yeah,
think it all,
and you totally said that better than I did. That's kind of where I was going because you know, when it says our three top messages, it says there's a myriad of messages here, and you know, are you inadvertently creating a bit of confusion by having too many messages? Jason, do you have some thoughts on that?
yeah, I was gonna say is, I mean, it all depends on how it's done. So yeah, going back to what Justin was saying, we have to get more context on the question in a
Right.
sense. There are
And
ways
I'm not trying
to
to be mean to
bring
anybody asking the
to
question.
no,
I'm
no,
just
by no
stirring the
means,
pot
by
here.
no means, but it's a complex question. So, you know, I think there's inherently some things to kind of you know, unpack in a sense. But it's something I wanted to touch on earlier that I think is a good opportunity to do so. It comes down to discipline in a sense. You're not going to be able to have an opportunity to tell that all those messages and everything and just communicate everything that you want to communicate in one, right? It's like a conversation with a person. You say hi. You say hi and automatically tell them everything about your life story in a sense. So I think it's about, you know, creating that engaging opportunity, developing a relationship. These things are long term. You know, I don't ever believe that, like, you know, yeah, if you've got a ton of money to throw at something, then yeah, you might be able to speed up some of that process. But for the most part, you know, these things are somewhat organic. They do take time to develop. So you have to give it time. And just one more thing was just going back into the discipline. What I've seen is, you know, kind of the 20-80 rule. It's like, it's very, sometimes it can be confusing. What's the best content? There's a lot of things that you can try, but what works best for our clients I've seen is being consistent, right? Like, okay, you know, we have client like every day at, you know, this particular day at this particular time, there's an email that goes out, and, you know, it happens every week, for example. And then you have opportunities to tell that story or a part of that story, you know, or to communicate something about your values, which inherently can communicate something about that message in a sense. But being disciplined with what you're doing, and then, you know, learning along the way to evolve and improve it. But I think, you know, to tell that story, you do need more opportunities. And as long as you're disciplined and you're consistent with when you're doing it in a sense, I think you can start to kind of like turn the tide.
Yeah,
Melissa,
and
let me give you the last word on that. Go for it.
oh yeah, with segmentation too. So if you've got 3 messages, it might be that there's a different audience for each one of those messages. So
Okay.
maybe there's a sustainability message, maybe there's a convenience and affordability, and then there's maybe like a, you know, this is the quality, you know, craftsmanship of it. Those are 3 different audiences. They may not care about that same issue. So you can communicate those 3 different messages. They just probably all are not going to be communicated to the same person at the same time.
Yeah.
Gotcha. We're getting close to the end here, but I want to ask you a couple more quick questions. Justin, I want to ask you this because of the fact that you have such a robust program there. A lot of people want to always know what success are you seeing with drawing people into the store, bringing them in. Any comments about that as far as digital content you've seen that has been successful in doing that?
Yeah, so digital wise, we're very heavy on search. We rely on that as our kind of main strategy of how to bring people in, and that all goes back to content. So that, you know, going back to that earlier conversation, you got to be investing in I say you got to be investing in content. We invest in content. Now, when I look at other people's sites, some people get a lot of their traffic direct. Some of them get it through paid. You know, there's different ways to acquire traffic. Now, not all traffic is created equally. So then you also have to look at, okay, well, where are we getting our best, you know, interaction? Where are we getting our best leads? But yeah, search, absolutely. And I would say that Google My Business is the unsung hero of the digital world. It hardly gets any attention, any focus, and it is a workhorse. It is doing so much work for you that I don't even think Google's really good at telling you how much that thing does for you. But I think most people underutilize Google My Business, because think about it. If they're doing a search for Great American Home Store, they're not seeing the Great American Home Store website first. We put a ton of time and effort into greatamericanhomestore.com. By comparison, most people not even ever going to go there. They're going to go to Google My Business and see the listings. They're going to see the photos. They're going to see the posts there. And I'll be honest, we don't put enough emphasis on it. I think that's a big missed opportunity. But yeah, search for us. But again, it may be different for somebody else. Other things that I think we just kind of overcomplicate, you know, content creation, ad creation sometimes. And this goes back to the cutting through the clutter. a lot of times simple is best. And I see this over and over and over with our social ads, especially. The most engaging ones are some of the most simplistic. They're not even like the buttoned up professional ones, kind of like what Jason was saying. They're just the ones we shot them on our showroom floor. It says in stock and here's our address, and it's like we've created all this other stuff, but that's what, we're seeing, like people, they're asking questions. Hey, I'm going to come into the store tomorrow. Those things sometimes, again, it doesn't have to be like you got to have a PhD in marketing and you got to have all these resources and technology. Really, some of the most engaging stuff a lot of times I see is the most simple. I look at other people's accounts and they're some of the really good things that we're not doing this, that we'd love to do this, but you got to have the right talent. You got to have the right person. Is doing in-store lives and then even doing giveaways on the in-store lives. Those are crazy engaging, and you don't need any kind of professional equipment, really, just a smartphone and somebody who talks and looks good on camera. So yeah, that's kind of what I would say for that.
Let me, and since we just have a couple minutes, Marissa, I want you to jump in on that as well, talking about, because it's ultimately it's what everybody wants out of this webinar and out of this their program, and that is for that digital content to drive people into the store and to convert them. You talk a little bit more about the things that you feel are the most successful ways of doing that right now when it comes to content.
I mean, I think there has to be a give and take. So you're using your digital to get people in the store, but if they're in the store, you need to give them something digital to do. So make QR code on tags that take you to the website, or to take you, or kind of social engagement kind of cues. Here's a tag that you can use, or take a selfie with this. I mean, just things that are fun and engagement to make that storeroom environment not boring and dull. But also things that are going to help them make a decision. So if they came to the store, something got them there. And again, it's a big purchase. You may not decide right then and there that this is the one that you want. So make it easy for me when I go home and take inventory of all the product I looked at. How can making it easy for me to call up that page on the website and look at those specs? So again, getting digital content to drive you in store, but then when you're there, don't make it like digital doesn't exist at all. And it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be kiosks or VR headsets or anything like that. It just has to be thinking about it from a customer's perspective. Okay, now I've left your store. Now what do I need to help me make a decision or to get back there?
I just love that line. Give them something digital to do. I like that. Jason, I'm going to give you the final word on this, as far as just briefly, as far as that bringing them into the store, which is the whole point of this trying to capture really great digital content.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of going off of what Marissa was talking about a moment ago, once you've gotten them in store and you can engage them with a QR code, for example, the great opportunity that comes from there is if you've taken them onto the site, is just thinking about an advertising tactic. There's ways of retargeting after that. Once they leave, retargeting has gotten extremely sophisticated. Where you can do retargeting on connected TV, for example, is something we do a lot of for our clients. On social media. Web banners is a different ways of doing that, so that you can kind of okay, well, they've gotten to that part of the funnel, then let's have the right content for that. And that can be, again, more tailored. It could be, okay, now it's time to hit them up with a specific promotional offer, or it could be, something that isn't so specific, but that is going to kind of motivate that moment in their journey.
You've wrapped the bow on this, because this gets back to the whole thing about having a plan, know your follow-ups before you start, you pick that great content, but make sure you know where you want to go with it. I am going to recommend everybody that's been viewing this, you may need to look at it again, because there's so many great takeaways, and you can do that because we have all of our webinars, as I mentioned, on demand at myhfa.org. And /webinar, but also this here, we've got digital marketing resources at go.myhfa.org/digital as well. Just go to myhfa.org. It's an incredible place to go to help your business. I want to thank the three of our guests today who have been just fantastic. We got Marissa Peacock, the Strategic Peacock. She's the co-founder and chief strategist there. Marissa, thank you so much for joining us. And Jason Pires, creative and brand director for Furniture Branding. As always, great to have you. And Justin Bowen with the Great American home store, their e-com manager. I just really feel like you guys have such a great, sophisticated program, and what I love is that you're willing to share. And I think there's so many things that everybody can take away today that you presented. So my thanks to the three of you, and as always, for everyone else, I'd like to wish you not only good health, but great sales coming up. And anything you need help from HFA, we are here for you. myhfa.org. I'm Mark Schumacher on behalf of all of us here at HFA. Thanks. We will see you next time.